Today I will be building a trestle-based outdoor table made from dimensional lumber and Trex decking. Stick around to see how I did it. I start by cutting the bottom beam for the trestle base to 36 inches. I add a 45-degree chamfer for additional detail. This piece is cut to 21.5 inches. It will be the vertical post for the trestle base, and it will attach to the top and bottom horizontal beams with pocket screws. Wood glue for additional strength. I can then clamp the post in place while I attach with pocket screws. The top beam is cut to 35 inches and attached centered on the post. This piece also gets a 45-degree chamfer, but it is cut more shallow to align with the width of the rails that I will be installing. I plug every pocket hole on this project for a smoother finish and to remove any crevice where water might collect. Next, I want to trim off about a 1/4 inch of each side of the post that will be used for the 45-degree blocking on the trestle base. In hindsight, a safer way to make this cut would have been to make my first pass, keep the blade at the same height, and just flip my board 180 degrees. I could have cut the sliver clean off and not have to raise the blade so high. Because I cut it this way, I'm left with a small lip that I need to cut flush with a router. I can now cut my 45-degree blocks at 14 inches long edge to long edge. I drill a shallow hole to sink the screws that can later be plugged with a dowel. These blocks can then be glued and screwed into place. If I zoom in on the connection between the blocks and the trestle base, you can see that difference of width of a 1/4 inch on each side. I think this is a cleaner look. Also, if your cuts and angles aren't perfect, this will help hide any imperfections. Another detail I'm adding is these 1/2 inch feet that will be attached to the trestle base. Given it is so thin and it is end grain material, I pre-drill the holes so not to split the wood. I can then gently screw into place. This plastic wood was left over from my last project, so I use it to fill the gaps left at any seam where a round over edge meets a flat edge. I could have used 2x4s for the rails, but I wanted something with a slightly thinner edge profile, so I take a 2x6 and rip it in half. The beam to connect the two trestle bases is cut to 57 inches. I use a drill bit guide to drill the holes for the dowels that will help with alignment during glue up. After a few practice runs, I found that doing this glue up vertically was going to be easiest. I don't own clamps long enough to hold this in place while the glue dries. My solution is a ratchet strap along with cardboard scrap to protect the wood. I can get plenty of clamping pressure to make sure that this isn't going anywhere. I notice at this point I'm slightly out of square, so I take another ratchet strap to pull these arms together about 1 inch. I I can then lock it into place by screwing down the rail. On my other side, the arms need to be spread out about 1/2 inch. So I use a clamp as a spreader to get these arms at the right distance, and I can then lock into place. Now I attach the final blocking in this inside corner of the frame. At the ends, I will have a transition between the boards running the length of the table, meeting a perpendicular board. I need to make sure I have enough blocking to support all the boards at this transition. Dowels to plug all of these holes. And I can cut flush with a multi-tool. Everything gets sanded roughly with 80 and 120 grit. This is mainly to remove any splinters, as I'm not looking for a perfect finish. I'm using a dark stain on this wood, and the manufacturer recommends a wood conditioner to ensure you have an even finish. This is applied liberally across the grain. I let it soak in for a few minutes and wipe off any excess before it dries. Originally, I planned on just painting the frame black, but I liked the idea of having a little bit of wood grain shine through. I opted for an oil-based black stain from Minwax. I apply this on thick, and again wipe off the excess before it has a chance to dry. This stain only needed one coat. For the sealer, I'm using an oil-based polyurethane. I apply it slowly to not introduce any bubbles, and I apply 2 coats. To keep any wood from direct ground contact and prevent water from leaching up into the table base, I attach these 1/2 inch plastic feet risers. I am using joist tape that you would typically use on a deck frame to prevent water from entering from the top. Now I can install the boards onto the top. I'm using Trex's hidden fasteners, which also serve as spacers, giving me a 1/2 inch gap between each board. Some of these boards have a slight bow in them, so I use a clamp to make sure everything is aligned before I screw the next board in place. These middle boards have a groove that accepts the tongue on the fastener. Since my end boards are square-faced, I have to modify the fastener on this last row by cutting off the outside tongue. This lets me run the square face end board up against the spacer and give me the consistent 1/4 inch gap. Since I can't use the hidden fastener on these end boards, I attach these using Trex's color match screws. These screws are designed to clean up the pilot hole as they are secured into place. After attaching the final end board, we're all done. Now let's talk cost. My largest expense on this project was the Trex decking. This was made up of 3 16-foot grooved edge boards and 3 8-foot square edge boards. This ran me about $144. The fasteners were a little pricey. I tried to buy these in the lowest quantity I could, and I still had a lot left over. Between the hidden fasteners and the color match screws, this ran me about $56. The lumber on this project consisted of 4 8-foot 4x4s and 2 8-foot 2x6s at a cost of $66. Between the pre-stain conditioner, the black stain, and the oil-based polyurethane, these ran me $48, though I do have a lot left over for future projects. Miscellaneous costs between construction screws, pocket hole screws, plugs, etc. I estimate at about $50. Total cost on this project, $364. For those still watching, thank you for hanging out here until the end. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more like it, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. Thank you.